Welcome, everybody, to my podcast called Insights into Israel. And today is a great day, a special day, because today Jeremiah and I are talking with Boaz Meir. And Boaz is the International Development Director of the Jewish National Fund. And today we're going to talk about JNF, we're going to talk about Zionism, we're going to talk about what's happening in the world today with the anti-Semitism that is occurring. And we've got a super knowledgeable guest with us today, so welcome,
Thank
Boaz.
you. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to our conversation. Thanks for being a friend of Israel, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yes, totally my pleasure. As I was saying to you, I love Israel. Been there not nearly as much as I'd like to, but the first time was in 2009. And since then, I've gone back to study there. I've also led tours there, including one in 2023, like just 6 months before the attack of Hamas. So feel very blessed, but also know that there are friends of mine in Israel who are suffering through this. It's been a very difficult time.
Correct. Yeah, it's difficult for all of us. It's challenging on so many fronts that we are definitely feeling a little bit puzzled by why is it happening and when will it end, and so many good ideas. But definitely we are thankful for friends. We are thankful for people that come and support us, and we are looking forward to hopefully change the pattern in which the world is. I'm talking about the Western world is seems to be in a place of very negative towards Zionism and towards Israel and towards Jewish people.
Right.
We wonder, when will it end and what will it take to end it?
Well, what does it feel like to be Jewish and Israeli in the world today?
Well, October 7 kind of changed everything. It took 180 degrees. If you would ask me that question October 6, you would get answer A. We are now in May, 7.5 months past October 7. October 7 totally devastated the Jewish community. October 7 has put us where Zionism and where being Jewish and Jewish hatred is so common that we are just taking a step back in a way to go, okay, what do we need to do? We have a strong country, we have a strong army, but we are tiny, and we are looking around and we see people that hate us, that scream from the river to the sea, and some of them don't know what they are yelling, and some of them don't realize what it is that they are saying. When we go and we look, when I look at the streets of the world and people are saying death to the Jews, and it brings back memories from 80 years ago, from Nazis, from 150 years ago, anti-Semitism and pogroms in Russia and in Eastern Europe. And we are, once again, in history, we are kind of feeling like scapegoats, easy to point a finger at, and people are just forgetting what do Jewish people want? What is the Zionist movement all about? What is it that we want in the world? We are people that are right now on one hand fighting in Israel. We can talk about that war. And on the other hand, we are concerned. We are concerned, do we have everything that it takes to win, number one, the moral war, and number two, the actual war? And we are still optimistic. We feel that we can do it. We have overcome a Holocaust. We have overcome so many historical horrors and nightmares. We believe that we can do that. It will take all of us together with our friends to overcome evil. And so when you ask me, what does it feel like to be an Israeli now, or to be a Zionist, or to be Jewish, which is kind of all of it is the same. It's the same description of who we are. I would say, number one, I'm proud. I am proud of who I am. I am proud of my heritage. I would say, number two, I understand that I am in a difficult spot. I need to fight. I need to fight, number one, the public opinion fight. I need to fight an enemy that is vicious, that has no morals, that is a one dimension, just kill everybody that has any resemblance to Jews. And I'm still optimistic that the world will understand, as it happens in the past, after we get out of this dark place, that we will be better.
Well, that certainly is our prayer for you. I think just to shift for a minute to you more personally, why don't you tell us about you and your journey with Jewish National Fund and your love of Israel? Just take a minute and tell us something about you that you think we should know.
So I was born, in 1963. We can do a trivia question. I was born the day JFK was murdered. You see?
It's a bad memory.
There you go. Let's just say many years ago. And I had a regular, wonderful childhood. I was born in a city called Petach Tikva, not far from Tel Aviv, a suburb of Tel Aviv. And we had a regular childhood. When I was 10 years old, that's 50 years ago, when I was 10 years old, I experienced the October War, the 1973 Yom Kippur War. So that was kind of, as a 10-year-old, you don't exactly understand what's going on. You just know that somebody knocked on the door and your father had to go to the army. And he would send letters, that's before cell phones, about what's going on. My father, who came to Israel after a Holocaust, had to go and fight in 1948, in 1956, in 1967, and in 1973 was the last war that he participated in. But for me as a child, I remember the knock on the door on Yom Kippur and, the Day of Atonement taking him. By the way, my father came to Israel on the famous Exodus, for those that saw the movie or know the story. So he has a whole experience that is so different. When I joined the army in 1981, I was straight into the First Lebanon War. That was my induction into the army. And then, college, got married, and I came to America in 1991 for this beautiful country, the land of opportunities. And I have to say, fairly quickly, when my older son was born in 1997, I realized that this might be home, but it's almost like a split personality. There's also the home over there. And we kept the Jewish tradition, we kept the connections with Israel. And my older son, who is now going to be 27 next year old, lives in Israel. He is an officer in the Israeli army. He decided he wants to do a career in the army. He's right now working long hours. He's not a combat, he's an intelligence officer. And I have a 16-year-old at home who loves Israel, and a 17-year-old with my second marriage, the son of my second wife. We are Jewish National Fund. So I was a fundraiser for many, many years, and for a Jewish Agency for Israel and for the local federation here in Denver. And then Jewish National Fund calls me. And they say, they didn't call me, I heard that they are opening a chapter in Denver, and I applied. I applied because Jewish National Fund mission is Israel. All the monies that we are raising goes to different projects in Israel. And for me as an Israeli, I guess I never stopped being an Israeli. Even after 30 plus years in the US, that was easy for me to make the transition to Jewish National Fund. And I feel fortunate that I get up in the morning and I work, and it connects me with my homeland. We make big differences in Israel. We are building the country. We are touching lives of thousands that would fall in between the chairs, through the cracks, that wouldn't get the support that would be so important for their lives, mainly in the periphery, which means on the borders with the Gaza region, with the Negev in the south, and in the north, not so much in the center of Israel. And so for me, Jewish National Fund is a home, is a family, and I just love getting up in the morning and doing the work that I do.
And you get to see the visible results of all that.
Exactly, right.
Like you can physically go see the results, which is nice.
It's funny that you mentioned that. When I was a young professional in the fundraising universe, my first fundraising manager told me, Boaz, when you go with a donor or with a group of community members to Israel, it's like those venture capitalists that take their people to see their investments and to see the companies that they work for. They see their investment in Israel and how much productive it is and how fruitful it is and how big of an impact it has on the lives of the people that they invested in. Correct. This is definitely when I go and I see a new water reservoirs or a new water treatment facility or a new resilience center or a new park or a new swimming pool in the middle of the desert and so many other things, or a village for people with special needs, I definitely feel I've done my share.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I want to talk some more about JNF, and I feel like we really need to get your thoughts about Zionism, but can you give us the elevator pitch about JNF? Like when you're speaking about it, how do you describe it to people?
So Jewish National Fund was funded 120 years ago. There was the 5th Zionist Congress, and the 5th Zionist Congress, let's remember it's number 5, right? So after 4, in which no decisions was made, Theodor Herzl, who is considered the founder of the Zionist movement, said enough is enough. We are beginning to raise money so that the people that are migrating from wherever there is anti-Semitism can go to a place they can call home. And the Jewish National Fund was funded by that group over there with the famous Jewish National Fund blue box. I need to find it. And money was raised from Jewish people, mainly from Jewish people, to buy land in Israel, which was under Ottoman Empire at that time. And the goal was so that people that moved to Israel have a place to go. That was it. So people started to move. The Zionist movement flourished. And we need to remember, Zionist movement, the only thing at that time that the Zionist movement had as a goal is to bring Jews to safety. And where would safety be? There was no other place that would be safe, and there was a homeland, our homeland. So they came here, they established here, they started their lives. There was no intention to hurt anybody. There is still no intention to hurt anybody. The goal is we want to have a home.
Well said.
We don't want to bother anybody. Let us live our lives and let's live in peace. So people moved in. So people moved in, and when Israel was established and Jewish National Fund was already a 40-plus-year-old entity with a lot of fundraising opportunity, the funding began to support Israel. And what did Israel need? It needed solutions for water, because all of the sudden, in the first 2 years, the population of Israel grew from 600,000 to 1.6 million people. 700,000 immigrants plus people that stayed there plus people that moved there actually from Arab countries, all of a sudden water solutions were needed. All of a sudden infrastructure for new communities were needed. All of a sudden you needed to take care of people with special needs, right? There were no institutions, no facilities for them. The fundraising of Jewish National Fund is always in collaboration with the local leadership. So Jewish National Fund has decided that we are going to work in what we call the periphery. When you look at the map of Israel, you kind of have three parts to it. You have the northern part, which is closer to the border with Lebanon. You have the southern part, which is 2/3 of Israel, which is a desert, which has only 1 inch of rain per year. And then you have the center. The center, I'm talking about Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Haifa. Obviously, population goes where, the big markets are, where there are more job opportunities. So our fundraising helped those that don't get that big chunk of budgets from the federal government, and we help them when they need. So I'll give you one example, because that will give you an idea about Jewish National Fund. In the desert, close to the Dead Sea, there are 6 or 7 communities with about 200 families in each, farm communities. If your son twisted his ankle in those communities 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you have 2 options. You drive 2 hours to the hospital in Eilat, or you drive 2 hours to the hospital in Beersheba. And if you are a pregnant woman that needs a monthly checkup, it becomes a road trip for a day or two to go and get it done. So the local leadership and the local people told us we could use what would be similar here to an urgent care. Let's build a medical center. Let's provide a job to a nurse or to a doctor to be there and take care of people as they need. So we build and we raise the money, we build an urgent care, but we also worked with an organization called Nefesh B'Nefesh, which helps people migrate to Israel, and we encourage them to send them to that community so it will have a doctor and a nurse. When you do that, when you support that, it becomes, number one, more sustainable from the economy, because people stay there. People buy more coffee in the coffee shop. People are buying more food in the restaurants and in the grocery stores. And therefore, that sustainability makes it easier and more attractive for families to move there. Those communities are on the border with Jordan, the ones that I'm referring to. And if we are not going to be there, let's just say somebody else is going to be there. And this is a crucial part of Israel, and it's within the consensus. There is no arguing about how important what we call the Negev desert is to Israel. So our fundraising, a Jewish National Fund, works with those communities that could use that help. It helps them sustain themselves. It helps them grow. And the more they grow, some of the needs are growing. So then we get into water solutions, right? All of a sudden they need more water solutions, and all of a sudden they need more money for more infrastructures or more services, let's say for people with special needs, and we provide these funds. So Jewish National Funds is the one that develops what we call the periphery, which Gaza envelope and the communities around Gaza were a big part of it. So we have been there for many, many years. We are there now, and we will obviously be there going forward.
Boaz, can you give us some statistics around that, like how many communities have been founded or helped out or developed with help from the Jewish National Fund? I mean, approximate's fine. Yeah.
So in the southern part of Israel, today in Israel, let's use today. Today there are close to 10 million people living in Israel. Important to say that 2 million of them are Arab citizens of Israel that has equal rights, that go, that vote, that get social services. Out of the 8 million Jewish people that live in Israel, more than 6 million live in that center. Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem.
Right.
In the southern part of Israel, in that Negev, which is 2/3 of the land, you only have about 600,000 people. And we want to increase that number in order for that area to flourish and not become so dependable on help from others. There are about 40 communities in the Negev, I'm talking about the Negev, that have been helped by us. Either cities, municipalities, or smaller communities, what we call Kibbutzim and Moshavim, that are like a communal, that everybody is a farmer, or everybody works in a certain factory that is in the community. And what we have done to them repeatedly throughout the years, we would sit with them and we would ask them, how can we help you grow? So you, instead of 100 families here, you will have 200. So we help with housing, and we help with medical centers, and we help with support of the local host therapeutic center for people with special needs. And we would build a water treatment facility so the recycled water can be used again for the agriculture. And so about 40 communities in the south, and in the north, we have been dealing mainly with the bigger cities. Not Haifa. Haifa is a very well-established city, but there are cities like Nahariya and Akko and Shlomi and Kiryat Shmone that while they were a city, it still wasn't enough for them. So the closer you get to the border with Lebanon, the needs are different, right? We would think about, how can I find a job? That's a need, right? Where would the nearest school would be? That's a need, but also, where is the nearest shelter, right? And shockingly enough, the reason why people were evacuated from the northern of Israel after October 7 is because there aren't enough shelters there. People don't have a place to go when the alarm goes off. So it was safer to move them away from there while we are dealing with the Hezbollah. And when they come back, we are already fundraising for shelters that would be in different spots over there, because right now there is a big need for that. So
there is some reacting to what's happening. Like, we see the need here for shelters on the border, and that is a beautiful part of Israel up north there. And it's amazing when you stand on Mount Bintal and you look over and you can see Lebanon right there.
And the Sea of Galilee.
You know, the UN security and the Sea of Galilee. It's all so, well, it's really flourished because of the technology that the Israelites have created with irrigation.
Correct.
You guys were masterful at creating. Yeah, you are the water people. But I wanted to make a comment about the kibbutzim, which is that some of them are very thriving and popular businesses because they are producing a tremendous amount of dairy products or other products that are shipped all over the world, correct?
Correct. So,
yeah. I mean, they're big businesses. They're not a small little communal thing. They are a well-established big business.
So the funny thing about kibbutzim is that when the Zionist movement started, right, a kibbutz was a very common way of living, because people would come and they would need to be together, right? They need to defend themselves together.
Yeah.
They had kind of the same ideology, right? It would be a modern Orthodox kibbutz. It would be a regular secular kibbutz. It would be all of that. Many of them have become successful business opportunities, but many of them struggled. So we see today many of them have gone through a privatization, whereas the kibbutz infrastructure turned into, just like a community, just like a gated community, for lack of better way to describe it. And many of them, I'm sure everybody heard the name Kibbutz Be'eri, which was attacked October 7, and they went through literally almost all the houses there. That's a very successful kibbutz. It's a kibbutz that has a printing house in it that prints almost every credit card in Israel, prints every check in Israel for the people. Very, very successful. So I'll share with you a story. Obviously, the kibbutz was evacuated after October 7. They went all of them.
Oh, tell us how many people live
So
in that
500
kibbutz.
families, about 2,000 people. So 500 families, and out, I don't remember the exact number, but I think more than 100 people were killed in that specific kibbutz. About 30 are kidnapped in Gaza, and the kibbutz was pretty much burned to the ground, other than the printing house. So they moved to the Dead Sea to hotels, which is a long drive in Israeli terms. You know, when you drive more than 45 minutes, oh my gosh, it's a long drive. So they moved to the Dead Sea, which is about 75 to 90 minutes drive back to their kibbutz. And the leadership of the kibbutz, after about a very relatively short time, I want to say 3 or 4 weeks, they got together and they say, we're going back, we're going to open the printing house, and you guys are not just sit here in the lobby of the hotel and become victims. We're going to have buses, we're going to go. They opened it. But here's the second part of it. Out of 600 employees in that printing house, 200 were Palestinians that would come every day from Gaza and work there and earn a living that was significantly higher than whatever they would make in Gaza, just the nature of the different economies. So when they moved back, they were severely short-handed. The work was still there. The workload was still there. So then a beautiful thing happened, because colleges were still closed and other businesses were not there. People came as volunteers. Students came as volunteers. They would get stipend, against their future tuition or against, wherever they are in the dorms, or just so that they can have some spending money. But they came, and it's thriving, and people now start to move back to Kibbutz Be'eri. Houses have been, painted and rebuilt and so on and so forth. But it is true what you said. Some of the kibbutzim are doing very well, and some of them struggled. Mm-hmm. The help of a non-profit helps them kind of stay, together, because they are the pioneers. They are on the border, either in Gaza or in Jordan. It's so important to have them there. They should be helped. They shouldn't be handing out, just to make them lazy, right? If lazy is the right word. But if they need help, because I'll give you one example, in the Arava, something which I was fortunate to be involved with. There is one kibbutz, it's called Chatzeva. The name doesn't matter. When it was founded by 50 families, and for many, many years, it didn't really grow. It had 100 families. And then they decided, kids started to come back. And all of a sudden, it went from 100 to 300. And now they have 200 more families that want to move there. But the water infrastructure was not there. It was built for 100 families. So they needed water treatment facility, because the sewage was going to some, gathering place not far from the kibbutz. So they would wake up in the morning to a beautiful smell from the sewage, right? But there was also shortage of, water. Still 80% of the people are using drip irrigation and such to raise those beautiful crops that you see all over. Those dates that we are buying, those big peppers, and so on and so forth. So a water treatment facility was needed, an investment of $2 million. And I got to tell you, from Denver, we have a non-Jewish donor that gave us $1 million. and it was matched by another Jewish donor, and now the construction is going on, and they will have those 500 families there fairly short. Like the construction is still going. Obviously, October 7th slowed down a little bit the construction, but it's now moving forward. So that's what Jewish National Fund is all about.
So you're talking about how you're funding these communities. That really is, I don't know if this is correct to say, that really is the heart of Zionism.
It is.
Right?
It sure is. It sure is.
Yeah.
Zionism, in one sentence, elevator speech, if we are speaking, is to give the Jewish people a homeland. And the homeland has to be in Zion. It has to be in Israel. This is our homeland, right? We don't want to create a Jewish homeland anywhere else because, number one, nobody wants us. Number two, this is our homeland. We don't have any place else historically that we would call home. So when we...
And it is your nation. I mean, it is your nation. You are entitled to do that.
And when we started to move there in the late 1800s, the Zionist movement, nobody got kicked out. Nobody was forced to leave. We paid top dollars for the land, and we moved people there. We paid top dollars for another piece of land, and people moved there. And when people that moved to the desert, believe me, nobody lived there. Nobody wanted to live there. It was just sand with no water, and people improvised and made it happen. So the Zionist movement, that's what it is about. When after the Holocaust, when Israel was established, the Zionist movement became, now we want to make Israel strong, number one, and we also want to create a connection between Jewish people that don't live in Israel and the new Israelis, the new state of Israel. A connection in the heart, a connection whereas my kids feel as connected to Israel as my nephews who live in Israel should feel connected to us. We are one nation. We are one religion. We are one people, and we have the same values. So it's easy for us to be connected. And that's what Zionism is. And we wish that we would also be able to live in peace with our neighbors. We wish that we would also be able to make that Middle East flourish and let everybody benefit from all of the innovations and from all of the successes that the state of Israel experienced.
I think it's worth noting that when you talk about we're one people, we worship one God, and you have your own distinct culture, like all of the festivals, etc. That's been going on for 3,500 years there. It's like when you think about how long the Israels have been in that area and also have done the same thing, stuck to their religion, stuck to their faith and their people group. I don't see how people can make the argument that you don't belong there. It's this whole anti-Zionism message that's going out today in particular. Where do you think that's coming from, like in your opinion?
I think that there are several reasons for it. I think if we look at history, if I go back to even to the Inquisition, if I go back to the destruction of the Second Temple, people would find reasons why I don't like you people, and therefore I will do my best. I will do everything I can to hurt you. The Jewish people were, after the destruction of the Second Temple, spread all over the world, right? And we just kept our tradition. Right. The Jewish person that lives in Russia, or the Jewish person that lived in France or in Germany, was a Jewish German, was a Jewish Russian. There was no, I'm Jewish and I don't belong to the country where I am. It was, we were just living, but we would keep our tradition that we inherited through generations. There were always also people that stayed in Israel and continued their lifestyle over there. But again, as you know, Israel went through the Roman Empire and the Greeks and the Byzantines and the Turkish and so on and so forth. So throughout the time, as we know, good times and bad times, economy and other reasons. And I think the way I look at it, many times somebody needs to be blamed. Let's blame the weakest link about why is it happening to me? Oh, it's happening to me because of the Jews. There was also a piece of jealousy because for some reason many Jewish communities were flourishing and successful, whereas others didn't. Some would say it's the hand of God, some would say other reasons, and then it was easy to mark the Jews as to be blamed for everything. So that's the historical piece of it. One would think that once Israel is established, that anti-Semitism should stop, right? If I'm not happy where I live, I go and live in Israel, in my homeland. However, something happened among the what's called the Palestinian movement, or I'm going to go back in history. The Palestinian movement, started in 1964, right? Palestinian Liberation Organization, and the PLO started because the people were at the time under Jordanian rule, and they really didn't like Jordan. They didn't like King Hussein. Right? And they were like, well, we are Palestinians, we are not Jordanians, right? And then 6-day war came, and all of a sudden those Palestinians were now under Israeli governance. So it was easy to hate the Jews. I'm like, oh, now the Jews don't let me have a Palestinian. And the truth of the matter, people forget so many times, Israel was looking for a peace agreement, a compromise between what we want and what you want. And that it always fell on deaf ears. It never worked. I don't know if you remember, in 1970, Black September, right? There were about 50,000 so-called Palestinians that moved to Jordan and started to say, I want Jordan to be Palestinian. What did King Hussein do? Massacred them.
Yeah, I was going to say something bad. Yeah.
Right? 25,000 people were killed in Black September. Hence, the terrorist organization Black September that came afterwards.
Oh.
September 1970.
Connecting a lot of dots there.
Then, the Palestinian movement was then fed by extremes, Arab, Muslim, with a lot of money. And this is where we cannot fight that money battle right now.
No.
Just us Israelis. There is no way. So what happens is that things are brewing and brewing underneath. And let's face it, the people in the West Bank and the people in Gaza are now living under some kind of not here, no there, and they don't have anything, so they are getting frustrated. And their leadership, I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to leadership, and their leadership is feeding them hate. What Israelis saw right now in Gaza, which we knew, but now we actually see it, what do you see in the schools, right? You see hate. You see the Zionists are bad. You see the Israelis are bad. You see that if you die as a martyr, you are a hero. You see, there is no way for the little kid that was born, that is now an adult, to know anything else. So instead of educating for peace, they are educating for hate. And the money is endless. The money comes from Iran, the money comes from Qatar, the money used to come from Saudi Arabia. All of these pockets of endless money just kept on feeding it. It was good for them, because when there is hate, you don't pay attention to the fact that you live in a hut without running water. You don't pay attention to the fact that you can have a different life. And it doesn't matter for us Israelis if the prime minister is a conservative right-wing person or if it's a left-wing Labour Party person. At the end of the day, who gave back all of Sinai to Egypt was Menachem Begin. Menachem Begin that was elected as the right-wing first prime minister, right? Who signed the 1993 Oslo Agreement? Yitzhak Rabin. Yitzhak Rabin was one of the biggest hawkish among the Labour Party. For him to shake hands with Yasser Arafat was as unheard of. But he understood that, something needs to be done. We cannot do the same thing. And then if we are going into Gaza, in 2005, who pulled all the Israelis out of Gaza? Ariel Sharon. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Again, the hawkish of them all, right? Said, something? You want to have your own state? I'm pulling out. Show me what you're made of. And the rest...
Well, and I have to make a remark about the fact that when he gave them the land, Gaza, it was a spectacular piece of land on the Mediterranean. It could have housed so many people very well. It could have been self-sufficient and self-supporting. And in fact, didn't the Israelis give them irrigation and other tools they needed in order to build hospitals, etc.? And so you have over this relatively short period of time where it went from a great opportunity to just an absolute repressive place to live with no opportunity.
It became a terrorist hub. That's what it became. It became so history. In 2005, Israel pulled out, and in 2007 were elections in Gaza. And who won the elections? Hamas. Okay. What was the first thing that Hamas did? Mm-hmm. They executed everybody that was a peace person from the Palestinian Authority. Because Hamas is a movement. And the movement of Hamas is what everybody is chanting now. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. The Hamas thinks that the Palestinian Authority is too weak in its fight against Israel. And that's why they were elected. I don't think that anybody in Gaza imagined the extremes that Hamas brings to itself. However, that's what Hamas is all about. And immediately, yes, when Israel pulled out and the next day, they just blew up all of the beautiful greenhouses and all of the hospitals and schools and medical centers that were there. And they started to create the terrorist hub that is now what Gaza is about. But you asked me about anti-Semitism. I want to get back to that for a minute.
Right. Yes, let's do it.
Anti-Semitism, hating Jews, anti-Zionism, it's all the same. It comes from, number one, lack of knowledge. It comes from, number two, extreme naivete that all they want is to free Palestine, because they are not. What they want is the same of what the Nazis want. What they want is the same as what many others want. They want to eliminate Israel and to get rid of the Jewish people. And when they say it, somehow people don't buy it. People don't believe it. You mentioned Fox News about Zionism. About 2 weeks ago, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal. A guy by the name of Lance Morrow. I don't know if you know him. And he wrote an article about the grim arithmetic of a just war. Because many people are saying the Israeli reaction is too much and so on and so forth. And he spoke in his article about Gettysburg. And he spoke in his article about Hiroshima. And he spoke in his article about what's going on in Gaza. And I will actually read you a piece of it because it's so good. I carry it with me and I'm failing to memorize it, right? And he says the following: demonstrators who call for the extinction of Israel and for the killing of Jews are, at the very least, guilty of inexcusable naivete about evil, about terrorism, and about the darkness that as experienced teachers may easily descend. They haven't the knowledge of history or sense of tragedy to understand how horror, surreal and satanic, will suddenly evolve. It could happen here, and some of these people wish it would happen here, and they just don't know what is waiting for them. And I think that this summarizes anti-Semitism, because those people, these days we have social media galore, right? Everything you go, you pick your platform, TikTok, Facebook, news media, whatever. And and these anti-Semites have so many resources, and it's so full of lies that, you see it again and again and again and again, and it happens. And it comes actually from what should be reliable sources. I'll give you one example. 10 years ago, this is 10 years ago, an Arab guy walks into a synagogue in Jerusalem on Saturday, during the Saturday prayer. He walked from East Jerusalem, which is, part of Jerusalem after 1967, and started to stab people. And he killed 4 or 5 people, including the rabbi. There was an off-duty officer on a Saturday at the synagogue. He had a gun, his own private gun. He pulled the gun and shot the guy. The guy died. Associated Press headline goes as follows: Palestinian shot to death on a Saturday in Jerusalem by an off-duty officer. That's the headline.
Wow.
CNN picks it up from Associated Press. Innocent. God forbid somebody reads more into it, what happened. So we are now facing what? Telling them that wasn't the case, telling them the story, and there are so many stories like that. There are so many stories about hate that is just rooted in hate. So if I am that student in Columbia University or anywhere else, and I open TV or I read the newspaper and I go, a Palestinian shot to death, I go, those Israelis, what are they doing? They are so evil. And another one, and another one, and another one, and hate is born. Hate that comes from lack of knowledge, from lack of knowing of history. I think the most shocking thing to me is when I see a sign that says something like "Gays for Palestine," because I'm like,
Right.
why don't you go? Why
It
don't
is
you
so
go to
shocking.
any of the Palestine or any of the Muslim countries and see what is it like to be a gay person over there? And I think that symbolizes to me that naivete that the guy from the Wall Street Journal is talking about, because
Right.
we are fighting ignorance. And that ignorance, we saw it in Germany in the 1930s. We saw it in many places during history. And that's the fight we need to fight. This podcast, more interviews, more parlor meetings, more one-on-one
Right.
talks with facts, just with facts. We don't need to get super emotional. We don't need to get angry when somebody doesn't know. But if anybody is willing to speak, we will bring the facts, because these are facts.
Yeah.
So,
I
Boaz,
think that's
so
an-
speaking of facts, there's a few things that I'm just shocked by that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. One, so from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I mean, it's catchy. You see people dancing to it. You're like, that's fun. Like that. They look at them, they're having a good time. Tell me exactly, factually, what that statement
The
means.
river is the Jordan River. The sea is the Mediterranean. So from the river to the sea should be, according to that, Palestine. Israel should cease to exist. It should all become Palestine. That's what that means.
And so what happens if Israel ceases to exist to the citizens of Israel?
According to them, everybody who is not loyal to the Palestinian country either shouldn't be there or should be dead. What have they done? What is Assad doing in Syria to everybody that says yes, sir, to his regime? What happens in Iran to everybody who dare to walk with open face, right? That's what would happen to Palestine. It will become a dark space, right? We can use Star Wars as an analogy, right? It will be the dark force.
Yeah.
That's what it would be.
Yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
The another thing that I hear often is just how vicious or mean Jewish people are, which has never been my encounter with them. It's the world's favorite scapegoat, as you pointed out. Historically, whenever anybody's trying to grab for power, who's stopping you from getting this power that I want? It's them. Go focus on them, and they go consume more power. We've seen it with communism. We've seen it with socialism. We've seen it inside of Germany. It's an odd, broken record that we see historically. So with that, what would you want to see a year from now? If you could paint whatever picture Boaz has the controls, how would you specify the region and all the people in there? What would you see?
I would see two pieces. In Gaza, I would see some kind of a governing body that is not Hamas, that agrees to change the entire textbooks in schools. I will see the world with the Arab money and with United Nations rebuilding Gaza to the point where they can have their own lives. They can be whatever they want to be, Muslims, Indonesia is a Muslim country, right? And, be a Muslim entity, right? On the other side of the equation, the Palestinian Authority should also, in a perfect world, have authority over the Palestinians in the Palestinian Authority, right? Also changing their textbook because they are also full of hate all the time. We need to eradicate terrorist cells from the West Bank, and let's flourish. Jeremiah, when I was in high school, so in Israel, during Passover, you are not selling bread, right? You're only selling matzah and whatever. I would take a bus to Gaza and I would buy pita there. And I would come home and we would have a feast because we don't keep kosher at home. That was life. But when we would go to Gaza, we would also spend a few hours on the beach because it had the best sand, like the Fiesta in Florida, the Fiesta Beach in Florida, it has that kind of sand. And that's what we did. And the people in Gaza were so happy that Jews gave them business. And they would come and be, the general help, right? The construction workers, the cleaning people, and those that were educated were pharmacists, and so on and so forth. Absolutely. That's the way it should be. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen in a year. Right, but if we change the regime and if we are able to get rid of, if we are able to do that root canal to the Hamas controlling Gaza the way they do, right, then the change would come, right, and that change would also weaken evil forces like Iran or like other dark forces that right now, Iran is a threat not only to Israel, it is a threat to us here. Because they are the funding of all of these terrorist cells that we may not even know about. We think about the Boston Marathon, right? You think about so many other incidents. I would be the last person to stereotype and generalize all the Muslims. That's not my intention. But there are terrorist cells that are spreading. They are getting bigger. We have to eradicate it before it's too late. What they are doing now by taking the library in Colombia, tomorrow would be a courthouse, and the next day it would be, and the next day it would be my house because I have an Israeli flag on the window, and that should stop. Right. That's what I want to see change.
So the thing that I would
excellent.
encourage everybody to think about is the contrast of the answers. One party is saying from the river to the sea, and let's understand what that means. And the other party is saying, you can keep Gaza. You can keep all these things. We want you to have your own life. We want you to be free to do what you want to do, except for kill us, right? So I think that it's an interesting contrast just from on a surface of one is preaching to eradicate a region, and one is saying, hey, we've got to figure this out together. So I think that message, for whatever reason, has been obscured. I think, unfortunately, colonialism has been the scapegoat. Zionism has become a synonym for colonialism in our cultural vernacular. I think that's sad. And I don't hear anybody here saying that Israel's been perfect.
It's not.
Israel's not a perfect nation. Has Israel made mistakes? Has America made many mistakes? America's made more mistakes probably in the last 20 years than Israel has in its history, right? Like we're none of us are perfect people. We've got to move on. And that's also one thing when we first met. I love how you explained JNF and how it's a apolitical organization. Walk me through that.
So when the JNF leadership gets together, we want to help Israelis where they are not getting the help that I don't like to use the words deserve, but let's say help that should be a service that should be by giving to them by a government, by a federal government. Mm-hmm. Israelis are doing a lot of things that Americans don't. We go to reserve army. We pay really high taxes, right? In return for these high taxes, there's a national health care that is free, and college is only $4,000 a year tuition, no matter what you study. So different philosophy, right, than the Americans. But we pay, if somebody makes $100,000 a year growth in Israel, they're paying $40,000 in taxes. Those taxes go to the army and should go to social services and others government subsidiary. Jewish National Fund is aware of that because it's political and because it's never perfect, that guy, that family, that kibbutz, that moshav doesn't get the resources to keep on developing or to just sustain themselves. So fundraising comes and helps them, benefits the region, benefits the country. That's the equation. It's very, very simple. And then you break it down into action areas, and each action areas has projects within them. So we at Jewish National Fund also decided we don't want to be political. We don't. Right? We there's enough fights and arguing everywhere. We don't need to add to it. And also, there are fundraising. One of the things about fundraising is that organizations should be good in what they do. So if, for example, ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, is so good with fighting and having programs in school, they have a program called No Place for Hate, and so on and so forth. That's not me. I raise money for water supply to a bunch of Israelis, because otherwise they won't be living there. They will go elsewhere. And it's important. So all of us organizations are important. Jewish National Fund has a niche that no other organization does. And the $100 million a year that we are raising here go to support those initiatives that are transforming the country. Sandy, you were in Israel. I'm sure you made a stop in Beersheba.
Yeah.
Beautiful city, right?
Beautiful
if you would
place,
go to
yes.
Beersheba 20 years ago, it was a hole in the wall. Other than a successful university, there was nothing there. There were no jobs. There was no development. The city would lose population every year. 14 years ago, Jewish National Fund initiated a Blueprint Negev, a $200 million campaign. I take it back, $600 million campaign. We were responsible for $200 million. We got the government to give $200 million, and we got the city to allocate and raise its own money, $200 million. And that's what you see today in Beersheba. You see a park You see a
Yeah,
park
it's
that
amazing.
is larger than Central Park in New York. You see a cyber industrial park that has a Microsoft building, a Google building, and a Qualcomm building, and a few Israeli startups buildings. That is the hub of the Israeli high-tech in Beersheba. You see a train that puts you in 40 minutes in Tel Aviv. You see an amphitheater that we wanted to build with 12,000 seats. The mayor said 8,000 seats. He regrets it because it sells out whenever there is a concert there. It's okay. Let this be our only problems. That's what Jewish National Fund did.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
transformation of Beersheba is the best diploma for what we do when we get involved in something.
It's wonderful how you're just so consistently there for your people, how strong you are, your pride in your country and your nation. This is not something that we regularly experience, but I'm very proud of what you've done, and I thank you for that. I did want to ask you, like, what can we do to support the Jewish people and J&F? My audience is probably mostly Christian, but we love Israel. So, what can we do to help
Do
support
you
you?
know that Israel is the only country that is not Christian, that the Christian population grew in numbers in the last 10 years? Because Christians are
I did
welcome
not know that.
and because Christians are loved in Israel. That's a fact. That's the only
I love it.
country that among them is the what you can do for us and
Middle
what we
East.
should do is we should unite in the fight of good versus evil. It's as simple as that.
Right.
Faith is something that I have a friend, a rabbi, who told me once. I asked him a question about God. How can God allow that to happen, and so on and so forth? And he said to me, Boaz, faith is belief. You cannot see it. You cannot touch it, right? It's whether you believe or you don't. And that's why he said, I, as a rabbi, will never argue about why you should believe in God. I will tell you why I believe in God. So for everybody who is Christian or Muslims or Buddhist or whatever your faith is, I always say, I admire you for your dedication to that faith, because that means you have values. That means you follow the values. You follow certain rules dictated, but you believe is the creator and your God. We, as Christian and Jews, we should continue to be together against those demonstrations, against evil. We should continue to make Israel strong. I work for Jewish National Fund USA. We do a lot of good things. I will be the first to say we are not the only ones. There are other ways to support Israel. If you want to see what we do in Israel, join our missions. We have interfaith missions. We have volunteer missions where you can go and volunteer with those. Think about those factories and those farmers that lost all of their workers. Right? I went on a volunteer mission 2 months ago now, and I went to pick up lemons one day at this farmer, and he told me I used to have 80 employees, 60 from Gaza and 20 from Thailand. And they're
Wow.
gone, right? The king of Thailand flew everybody to Thailand on October 8th, and the Palestinians obviously cannot come anymore, right? So volunteers, us,
Yeah.
you know, 2 buses,
I saw that on
right?
your website, and I love the fact that you've created a mission opportunity for people. I think that more people in the church need to know
Uh,
about that. Not just go for a tour, but actually go to
Correct. It's
serve
really
Israel.
not
I
a
think that'd be
tour.
great. And I
It's
don't,
really a labor.
yeah,
It's a
no, it's
labor.
not. No, no, I'm saying instead of just going for a tour, if you've
Yes,
already been, go for a mission, actually work there.
absolutely.
I did want to make a comment about your thoughts about good and evil. I completely agree with you that there is a calling to support good, the good, and to fight evil. And we can't deny that because it's all throughout the Bible, and it is part of what we're called to do, is support the good and fight against evil. And this is, to me, very much a fight about good and evil at the highest level. I mean, take away the people who are definitely suffering and may feel like they're caught in this fight between good and evil, for sure. At the very top, it is all about good and evil. And yeah, I can see that clearly. So thank you for bringing that up. What else is a key takeaway that we need to know and need to get the word out about?
I would like to suggest two things. The first one is that when somebody is telling you, I heard that, and it's a derogatory thing about Jewish people, about Israel, it has a stereotype. If that person is open to a conversation, please give them my number. I would love to speak with them. If they are one of those, my mind is made up, don't confuse me with the facts, I'm not going to deal with it. But if somebody says, I heard that, how can it be? Why is it so? And so on and so forth. Send them to me. I will be the last person, Jeremiah, as you said, to claim that Israel is perfect. We are not perfect. But God is our witness. We try to do right and justice every day. I think about what's going on right now with Rafiah, right? Where Israel wants to go into Rafiah in order to eliminate the last stronghold of Hamas. And you know, here in Denver, there is the Wings Over the Rockies museum. Mm-hmm. And when you go there, as you go in, before you go to see the airplanes, there is an exhibition with pictures from World War II. And one of them is showing Berlin, 1944, and it's all destructions. And you see people standing in line and an airplane coming and dropping food for them because there is no other food. And when I do a PowerPoint presentation and people ask me to speak about Gaza, I start with that picture. And people are certain that I'm showing them a picture from Gaza, and I go, no. This is Berlin, 1945. This is what you Americans did to Berlin in 1945, because there was no other choice. Nobody wants to hurt those Germans that are standing right now, starving for food, which is being dropped for them from the sky. But without that destruction, Hitler would have been everywhere. Nazism would have been everywhere. We are right now fighting the same war with a much different population and with a much different... Germany turned 180 degrees. Germany built and said, oh boy, that will never happen again. You cannot be a Nazi in Germany 2024. We want to have no Hamas in Gaza in 2025, right? And that would be the beginning of the build of turning the entire Middle East to what Germany is today. That can be done. Leadership needs to change. Priorities need to change. Education has to be done from a small age. That's what they take. And if people are not willing to speak to us about it, it's tough. But if somebody is willing to speak to us about it, I welcome that conversation. Day, night.
Well, and they could learn more about you and the organization at jnf.org, which is your website. And I think it's got some fantastic information on that. Jeremiah, do you have any concluding thoughts or comments or questions?
I mean, absolutely, but also I feel like our time is probably spent today. Boaz, I hope that we can do this again and we can continue this conversation with you, because I feel like we just scratched the surface on some like the really interesting things of, unfortunately, with the cloud that is over this issue right now with post-October 7, that there's so much depth to how can Israel be a light in a dark spot. And how can we enable that? And how can we give understanding? And that, again, doesn't mean Israel is perfect. That doesn't mean America is perfect. And that doesn't mean that the folks that live in Gaza are evil. But there are big things at play here that will be fun to get past to start to move the needle, like you said. So what does this region look like in 2030? What does it look like in 2040? How can possibly our kids live in a better world
That's
than we
right.
live now?
That's right. I think people don't realize that before Hamas and before Intifada, we were heading in that direction. Our goodness, our well-being of us and our neighbors was hijacked by evil forces. It's time to eradicate the evil forces and rebuild again. Trust is not an easy thing, but trust will take us a long way in Israel. I'm reminding you and the listeners, there are 2 million Arabs, Muslims, living in Israel today. They are not going anywhere. They love living in Israel. They make a good living. They have rights. They have health benefits. They have freedom to vote. Where else in any Middle Eastern country do they have it? That's what the Middle East should be. That's what I wish for all of us. I hope that my 27-year-old kids won't have to go to a mandatory army service the way he did when he turned 18.
Yeah. Well, I want you to know that our thoughts and prayers are with you, and we stand by you and we support you. We're grateful for the time you've taken just to help us understand more, because learning is a big part of how we're going to find a solution here. So thank you for all your wisdom and your knowledge and for sharing that with us, Boaz. We really appreciate it.
It's been my honor, and thank you very much, and we'll be happy to do it again. Hopefully.
Oh yeah, we'd love to have you do it again.
How about that? That would be our prayer. That would be our prayer.
That would be awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Boaz.
Appreciate you, Boaz.
We'll looking forward to talking to you again
Thank you
soon.
so much.